Watching Kingdom, the Korean zombie series on Netflix, I found myself wondering, how did we get here? The scary things I remember from my childhood in Korea in the 90s are virgin ghosts who led a purgatorial existence because they had not been allowed to enjoy the fruits of married life, Chinese zombies that I saw in Hong Kong movies, and shamanistic rituals in Korean documentaries. The first time I remember seeing zombies on Korean television was in 2008, in a comedy show called Ultimate Challenge, that did a spoof of Danny Boyle's 2002 film 28 Days Later, somewhat belatedly 6 years after the film's release. Since then, there have been a few zombie films, including the 2016 blockbuster hit Train to Busan, which shows a train full of people chased from one end of the country to the other. Perhaps a place to start unpacking this phenomenon of Korean zombie movies is what film critic Robin Wood wrote in 1978. Describing horror movies as collective nightmares, he argued that scary movies provide a valuable window onto what our society represses or oppresses. I think that would be an appropriate starting point in examining the impulse behind this zombification of Korean history. The show is set in the 16th century, in the aftermath of an unspecified Japanese invasion that ravaged the country. The writer, Kim Eun-hee, takes liberties to create a fictional time period by combining issues from different parts of Korean history. Here, the power is in the hands of the Cho clan, much the same way the Kim clan once clung to power. The patriarch of the Cho clan intends to prolong his family's hold on power by making sure that the king is alive long enough for his daughter, the queen, to give birth to the heir to the throne. This single-minded pursuit begets an unnatural way of prolonging life, thus giving rise to the zombie disease. Then it's not hard to see what the zombie series suppresses or represses. It's the memory of a history in which the masses suffered because of the elite's greed and obsession with power. We see, nakedly, though in zombie form, how much the people suffered back in those times. The history of corruption and continual weakening of the state is a source of shame for Koreans who look back upon their history. As a result, conventional Korean period dramas often tend to only mention this in passing. Sometimes they ignore it altogether, preferring to portray a more heroic version of Korean history. So perhaps this show is an effort to bring to the surface that shameful historical memory. But I'm afraid this explanation is not good enough. It's important to examine zombies also as a pop culture phenomenon that has very little to do with horror. You see zombies in K-pop music videos, as well as in comedy programs. Zombies are kind of fun. I think this sense of play is part of an attempt by a culture to find a way to incorporate a very foreign genre into the cultural vocabulary. And I think something really interesting happens in this process. Film critics have noted a change in the Korean approach to horror in the last 25 years. Dark or evil spirits are no longer understood, as they had once been, as manifestations of beings that have unresolved business on Earth. Horror films today increasingly involve encounters with Western projections of the occult, which tend to involve beings that are manifestations of pure evil. Zombies are very obvious examples of this phenomenon. I think something really curious happens when you impose this genre on a depiction of Korean history. We find ourselves imposing a good and evil dynamic to a history of malgovernance and mistreatment of the masses. It means that Koreans are ready to label the ruling methods of an entire era as evil. I think this is a sign that Korean society is getting ready to move on from its previous identification with its past. Perhaps this comes from a growing confidence in modern modes of governance. A country that is growing confident in its democratic system can start to see itself differently. I wonder if Westernization is creeping into not just Korean entertainment, but also into how Koreans narrate and think about their own past. I think that's fascinating. Maybe this zombie series reveals a country that is ready to see its past in a completely different light.